In the season when the lagoon held its breath, Daniel Reeves, master of beams and blueprints, a man who could read the language of concrete like scripture, came home at an hour when shadows still remembered morning. His hard hat rode the passenger seat like a tired crown. He set it down in the hallway of the house he and his wife Claire had bought when the earth felt firm beneath their lives. "They cut 30%, he said, voice steady as a plumb line. 14 years, gone between the coffee break and lunch. He laid out the numbers as men of careful hands do, severance like a small basket of yams, savings like a shy goat tied to a short rope, a plan drawn with straight edges. He expected the ordinary balm of marriage, a hand on his back, warm soup, a silence that meant we. But the drums went quiet in Claire's eyes. No storm of pity, no steadying nod, only the faint taste of worry that smelled like station perfume and appointments that overran the clock. She closed her laptop like a door and walked past him as if the hallway were now a border. That evening, the house learned to breathe shallow. Dinner dishes whispered criticism, and the blue light from her phone spread on the ceiling like unreliable moon. Daniel sat in the living room with the quiet of a man listening for cracks in a wall. He did not break. Men raised by straight edges do not swing hammers at guesswork. He folded his grief like cloth, placed it where he placed all things, on the far shelf, then marked the moment with the private oath builders make. I will hold until the truth bears weight. The weeks that followed walked on needles. Daniel rose at dawn to fire arrows of applications into a forest of job boards, each arrow feathered with a lifetime of competence. 4 interviews came like reluctant birds. One perched on his shoulder, then lifted away to an internal candidate. Claire's hours elongated like a lie in the sun. She said the dental office was drowning in billing, 13-hour tides that pushed past the time the receptionist locked the glass door and rolled down the shade. When she ate, she frowned at the size of Daniel's portion, as if a spoon could undo a recession. When she smiled, the smile was a half moon aimed downward, lighting the geography of her phone. He felt the house shrink by degrees, the way a shirt forgets its owner in the Hermotten. The couch learned to separate them by an extra cushion's width. The bed learned to tighten its corners against casual reaching. Even the hallway mirror, a simple sheet of glass over a wooden frame, began to reflect 2 separate weather systems, Daniel's patient harm, Claire's summer of errands. In this squeezed air, a thought arrived on bare feet and would not leave. Someone has set a second table and is eating there. Yet the son of John Reeves did not throw words like stones. His father had taught him 2 rules after his mother died: never repair cracked truth with paint, and never accuse without holding the nail of proof. So Daniel did what builders do. He made a plan. The call came from Ben Miller, a former co-worker turned electrician, a man who could make copper sing and silence obey. Ben spoke the way truthful men do when their tongues hate the errand. "Danny, I don't have proof, only a rumor buzzing where the wires meet the break box." Daniel felt the floor of his chest shift an inch, then settle. Rumors are leaves, but a wind is a wind. He thanked Ben and sat a long time with the phone warm in his palm, the way hunters sit with the bush breathing around them. The lion of anger paced in him, but he did not open the cage. Instead, he went down to the market by the bridge, where kiosks sold everything from fake perfume to real wisdom hidden in ordinary plastic. There he found an old tinkerer who sold listening gourds, though the label called them voice recorders. The man's laugh had the sound of sand. "You want to catch a lie?" he asked, adjusting his spectacles. "Lies sweat. Truth simply breathes." Daniel bought a device no bigger than a car key, black as a moonless promise. That night, while Claire showered, he stepped into the garage and opened the driver's door of her sedan and slid the gourd under the seat where dust keeps its secrets. He closed the door softly, like closing a patient's eyelids. Then he did what fishermen do after they cast into dark water. He waited with his ears, and he trained his heart to be kind to the pain it was about to receive. For 6 days, the gourd drank ordinary tides, radio jingles, the clatter of keys, small sighs of traffic. Daniel felt foolish and relieved in equal measure. Perhaps the rumor was only the town's need to chew a story. On the 7th night, Claire said she was meeting a friend for dinner, the way people say weather when they mean storm. She returned late, smelling of a cologne he didn't wear, offering a kiss to his cheek that stayed in the air. In the morning when she left for work, Daniel carried the recorder inside like a man, bringing in wood before rain. He sat at the table, pressed play, and listened as if listening were a trade you could learn. The gourd did not give him mercy. It poured proof until his hands shook. A man's voice flared and softened like bad neon. Claire's words darkened into shapes he had never seen in her mouth. They spoke of hotels and cover stories, of Fridays that bent like reeds, of girls' movie nights that reeked of gasoline and lies. The knife entered and twisted when she said she couldn't be with someone who didn't have his life together, as if the layoff had been a moral failing and not the math of contracts. She spoke the ex-boyfriend's name with the softness reserved for prayers. "I love you," she said into the gourd's ear. "Once he finds something stable, I'll tell him. It will look better then." Contempt knotted itself into a plan and called it timing. Daniel pressed pause and stared at the wall where a wedding photo hung straight as a verdict. He stood, washed his face, and felt the lion sit quietly beside him. "We build with facts," he told the mirror. "Let's gather bricks." A builder trusts his eyes, but eyes are easily charmed. Daniel needed a mirror that ate lies for breakfast and burped dates and times. He found it in the same market, sold by a boy who knew nothing of its moral appetite. A discreet rear view, a truth mirror that watched the car from the windshield back with sound so clean it could eavesdrop on a thought. He fitted it to Claire's sedan in the afternoon, telling her he'd scored a safety upgrade cheap. That Friday, she said there was a birthday dinner. The mirror watched her leave the neighborhood and pick up a man whose hand cleaned her face like a signature you don't erase. They laughed into the camera's throat and kissed at a red light while the traffic sighed. The mirror followed them to a cheerful restaurant where the waiters clapped for people whose candles would soon be smoke. Afterward, the map of their night tilted toward a dead-end road behind a row of warehouses where even the moon walks on tiptoe. There, the mirror listened to their plans spoken in the grammar of self-justification. Claire said she would tell Daniel soon, but only after optics improved. She spoke of the house as if bricks were a ledger and love a receipt. She counted contributions and attorneys, and the way a story would look on paper when told by a mouth that practiced in other people's ears. Then the windows fogged with the heat of their bodies. The mirror, faithful and unblinking, ate that too. In the morning, Daniel downloaded the night, and the night became evidence. Timestamps like iron, angles like spear points, words like handcuffs. He placed the files next to the audio beside a spreadsheet he had started that braided call logs and late nights into a rope. "Now," he whispered, "let us lift. Truth is heavy, but it clears the air." While his heart limped, Fortune, disguised as an old colleague, knocked. Andrew Cole, who had left contracting to build an inspection company, called with a lifeline. "Base pay, commissions, van, benefits. You'll own your days again, Dan." Daniel felt the floor under him remember how to be a floor. He accepted, trained hard, kept his mouth closed, and brought home a first paycheck he placed quietly in a drawer. Claire said, "Oh, that's good," as if he had found a lost sock. He didn't correct her. He simply added more bricks to the wall that would bear his exit. Then came counsel. He met Miss Parker, a divorce attorney whose smile had the clean edge of a chisel. She looked at the stack he brought, audio, video, logs, a diagram of the marriage's collapse with arrows and dates, and nodded once, slow. "In this state, adultery is a river that erodes alimony. We will walk on the dry stones. She advised secrecy, speed, and the courage to be the adult in the room. Daniel called his father. John Reeves listened without interrupting, then said, "Son, bring your skin and your keys. The rest can come later. No shouting in my driveway. My house has its own fence." That night, Daniel packed the essentials: documents, tools, a brass coin his father had given him when he first got married. "For crossroads," John had said. He zipped the bag, looked once around the shrinking house, and told the bed quietly, "Thanks for your years. Death of a lie requires daylight." On a Wednesday morning between 9 and 10:30, Daniel signed what needed signing. By 1:15, a process server stepped into Claire's office with the paperwork: divorce on the fault of adultery and a petition to partition and sell the house. The paper spoke in the voice of iron: dates, exhibits, expectations. Phones in the dental office recorded their own rumors as Claire's cheeks learned new colors. She called, texted, threatened lawyers so fierce they could make him pay, poured words into the line that Daniel recorded and filed like dusted fingerprints. He did not answer. He drove to his father's house where the old man waited in the doorway, legs planted like two small trees. When Claire arrived angry as noon, John raised a palm and said, "This threshold is an oath. You will not cross it today." She left with words that rattled the mailbox. That evening, Daniel took his story to the talking drums of their time. He wrote a measured post: no audio, no video, simply the plain song truth. "During a season of loss, my spouse took another hand. We are done. Wishes peace." Then he closed the app and let the town square carry the bell. People responded as people do when clarity is finally allowed to speak. Blessings, shock, we suspected, and a few careful apologies for where their silence had done harm. Claire tried to throw a counternet, posts about control and emotional neglect. But the drums had watched the marriage from the rooftops. Their replies walked her assertions to the river and let water handle them. By morning, she had deleted her story and deactivated the square's ear. The drums kept beating Daniel's name like a plank in a flood, steady, buoyant, unsinkable. Courts, when they do not swagger, can be temples of relief. Miss Parker walked Daniel through corridors that smelled of old polish and the sighs of people who needed new maps. The opposing lawyer, Mr. Harris, a man who liked the sound of his own shoes, began with soft petitions for counseling and considering the years invested. Miss Parker slid a folder across the table that ate music and nights. Mr. Harris looked, swallowed, and changed keys. The divorce became a quiet machine. Alimony, once a ghost waving from the far hill, vanished. The house, brick witness to 1,000 small breakfasts and several large lies, went to market and sold. The profit split like bread between those who had once believed we meant the same thing. Claire moved into the warm arms of Mark Ellis, the affair partner who had promised her that new weather would be kinder. Daniel moved into the spare room in his father's house with his tools, his coin, and the dignity of a man whose hands were clean, even if his heart would carry a limp for a while. He rebuilt what mattered: credit, sleep, the habit of hearing birds in the morning. Claire sent emails with apologies written in the ink of self-preservation. Daniel did not respond. His father fed him yam and quiet, took him to church, and on Saturdays they replaced the cracked tiles in the kitchen. Hinges must align, John said, or doors will lie about being closed. Daniel smiled with a mouth that remembered how. December came with a promotion like a smooth cedar board. Senior inspector. A team of 3 learned to trust the way Daniel could read a wall and hear the whisper of a failing pipe. He paid cash for a truck, not to flex, but to be unafraid of mornings. In January, he moved into a modest 2-bedroom with sunlight that walked across the floor like a cat. He bought a table, used but sturdy, assembled it with the patience of a man who appreciates joints that hold, and ate his first meal alone. It tasted like rain after heat. He slept without dreaming of doors. Claire came to the driveway of his father's house one evening asking for closure, a word that in some mouths means permission to rewrite. John stood on the step with the law behind his eyes. Daniel obtained a temporary protection order, not because he feared harm, but because peace requires fences. He wrote, for himself, 5 lessons in a notebook with squared pages. Trust the hair on your neck. Gather truth like bricks. Remember your worth even when your wages forget it. Starting over is a road, not a cliff. The right thing usually spills sweat. He taped the list inside a kitchen cabinet. Each morning when he reached for salt, he brushed the edge of the paper and felt the future grip his palm like a handshake he could keep. A year passed, and Daniel's life put on muscle. He mentored a younger inspector who thought the city ended at the toll gate and taught him how houses lie and how they tell the truth. On Sundays, he and John replaced window frames in the old family home, speaking mostly with their hands. The last hinge on the last cabinet clicked into place one evening with the sound of a small, perfect verdict. Daniel stood back and felt a wide calm. He didn't post it. Not every victory belongs to the square. Some belong to the room that held the hammer. News drifted, as it does, on the back of taxis and the fronts of tongues. The man Claim had bet her news story on folded when money grew questions. She moved in with her parents for a while and posted photos of soups that tasted of repentance. Her job, officially eliminated, vanished like smoke that had been waiting for a draft. She texted Daniel once, "I'm sorry." He stared at the words and felt nothing he needed to feed. He had work in the morning, and a father to laugh with, and a truck that started not just because of batteries, but because its owner had decided his life would start every day. He went to bed. Outside, far over the lagoon, thunder cleared its throat, remembered its own true name, and spoke without rage. In the end, the city did what cities do. It dressed in new lights and forgot what did not ask to be remembered. But in certain houses, especially those with fresh hinges, stories hang like gourds above the doorway to remind travelers what roads cost. When friends asked why Daniel never remarried his past, he smiled and told them a folktale the way elders tell of tortoise and sky. Once a builder married a woman who mistook his job for his value. When loss visited, she reached for a ladder that leaned against another man's window. The builder, who loved quiet truth more than noisy rage, listened to a gourd and trusted a mirror. He walked the road of quiet footsteps, protected by a father who understood fences and an advocate who knew the law's spine. He let the talking drums handle the street and kept his hands for work. He sold a house that had become a battlefield and built a life that could be a home. As he finished, he would sometimes take a small brass coin from his pocket, the one his father had given him at his wedding, and let it warm in his palm. Crossroads, John had said, this world loves them. Daniel would rub the coin and think of doors that tell the truth and of thunder that speaks when spoken to by those who have earned quiet. Then he would slip the coin back into his pocket, check a hinge just because, and step into the day that waited, unafraid. For there is a proverb that doesn't care what language holds it. If you build with honor, even ruins will point toward your name. And that is how the masquerade of deceit ended. No chorus, no curtain, just a bow to the man who refused to dance to its drum. What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you at your lowest point? If this touched you, don't just scroll away. Share it, subscribe, and let these lessons travel. Remember, even when life breaks you, you have the power to rebuild stronger. Until next time, stay true, stay strong.